Hi, welcome. As of this week, we are officially in the Hebrew month of Nisan, the first month of the Jewish year. Wait a minute. You may be saying to yourself, what did she just say? How can the current Hebrew month of Nisan be the first month of the Jewish year when we observed Rosh Hashanah last September? According to the Talmud, until the Exodus occurred, or what we call the redemption from Egypt, the months were calculated starting from the creation, or from the time the world was renewed after the flood, or from the birth of Abraham, or from the covenant between God and Abraham. However, as soon as the redeemed nation, that is the freed Israelites, came out of Egypt, they abandoned all other calculations and counted only from the redemption. As it says in the Torah, the Exodus happened in, quote, the first of months for you. Once Nisan was established as the first of the months, every other month was counted from Nisan. So the month after Nisan, Iyar, is the second month, and the month after that, Sivan, is the third month of the Jewish year. Tishri, the month in which Rosh Hashanah occurs, is the seventh month and is considered by our tradition the month in which God created the universe. The first of Tishri in ancient times was also designated as the New Year of the Kings, which means that despite the actual beginning date of a new king's reign, they were all assigned to the first of Tishri for record keeping and consistency. It's sort of like our presidencies starting on January 20th, which they do, but let's say one had started in November and maybe one had started in May, they would all be counted from January 20th. We can understand how a ruling sovereign would want the new year, Rosh Hashanah, to coincide with his reign. That and the association with creation combined to cement the observance of the first of Tishri as Rosh Hashanah. But in the Jewish value system, while creation is miraculous, the exodus from Egypt is even more so. In creation, God established the natural world and the laws of the natural world, inhabited by humans and other living beings. By redeeming an enslaved people, a new world was created, a world of ethical behavior, ruled by the laws of right and wrong, and of freedom as the natural state of every human being. In order to bring this world into existence, God had to bend the rules of nature. God had to work miracles to reflect the miraculous nature of a free people and of the principle of freedom as essential to the proper and eternal functioning of the world. In this formulation, freedom or redemption is more important than creation. So let us take our break to breathe, thinking about the nature of freedom, the miraculous nature of freedom, the still inaccessible nature of freedom for all, that is absolutely miraculous and extraordinary. So let us find our comfortable postures, our meditative postures, and let's relax all those held muscles and joints and tissues, and uncreak the creaks and unhinge the hinges, and just try to think of ourselves more like rag dolls than that. We should be upright, but then than human beings that are forcibly held in tight and stressful positions. So let us find that equilibrium between attentiveness and ease, between a certain kind of physical assertion and a softening. So you might close your eyes, soften your gaze, and then let us do our inventory, just letting go of the creases in our foreheads, of the tightly held jaws, the clenching jaws, of our ears that are always straining not to miss anything, of our necks that hold our heads in place. They have such an important role to play. And take a lot of abuse, I think, because of it. Our shoulders, you can roll them forward, roll them back, scrunch them up, and let them go again. We can flap our arms, our elbows, our wrists, kind of make them circulate in ways that we might not think to do all day long. Wiggle our fingers, shake them out, and let us think inside as we soothe our digestive systems and let them relax for a moment. And imagine that all of the organs inside our bodies are just letting go, just being, just floating where they are supposed to be. And if we release our waists and our hips a bit, it allows our insides to find their comfortable positions. Our legs, our knees, our calves and ankles. Our feet, I think, take a lot of abuse as well. Wiggle our toes. And then let us, again, just with a sense of imaginatively traveling from the outside of our bodies to the inside, let us take that first big, conscious breath. The one that fills us up, that makes us realize we've been breathing so shallowly all day. It might be interesting just to kind of take a quick big breath, kind of release that before we take it more slowly and more consciously. It's a different way of recognizing that we don't pay attention and we don't breathe deeply most of the time. So we can feel that breath coming into our bodies and follow it and feel it. The air, the temperature, the place it comes into our bodies, our noses or our mouths, the places it goes down our throats, into our lungs that necessarily expand because of the air that we are breathing in. We can imagine the breath going very deep into our tummies, even into our legs and all the way down to our toes. And let's hold on to that for just a couple extra seconds. And then we can let it out. And let's stay with it. We want to stay with that breath, that concentrated breath, because that keeps us anchored in this moment, which is the only moment we have. Right this moment, when we are breathing, is the only time we possess. We don't think that way. But in reality, it is true. So this is a kind of luxuriating in this one moment that moves imperceptibly to the next one moment and to the one after that, but we move with it, not anticipating, not remembering, just moving with it from breath to breath. And if we want to supplement our breathing practice with a kind of reflective practice, we might reflect our gratitude for the freedom that we enjoy, even while we know at this very moment, most of the world is not free. Speaking of freedom, of redemption, they're one and the same, really. Do you ever wonder if our festival of Pesach might be obsolete one day? Or that at least it won't be quite so relevant and insistently contemporary? Year after year, I am amazed at how the ancient foundational story of the Jewish people has proven to be prophetic. There is something chillingly mystical about the fact that our story of enslavement and ultimate redemption has repeated itself many times in our history. We have only to think of the Babylonian exile, the destruction of Judea and the temple in Jerusalem by the Romans, the Middle Ages and the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the pogroms of Russia, the Holocaust, and even today's challenges of anti-Semitism, of Israel's political situation, of gun violence, of our threatened democracy. These are all enslavements of one kind or another. The list goes on and on. There are Egypts, there are Mitzrayims, the Hebrew for Egypts, all around us, which is why we say at our Seders, redemption is not yet complete. The literal meaning of the Hebrew word Mitzrayim, which we translate as Egypt, is the narrow straits. The narrow straits. In other words, when we left Egypt, we passed through the narrow straits, the constricting, oppressive, life-denying straits of Egyptian life and culture, into the openness and expansiveness of liberation, of freedom, of possibility. I read a teaching recently of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, in which he asks, why was there a Passover to begin with? Why the years of suffering and slavery? Almost from the outset, we know that the Israelites are going to be enslaved. and redeemed from that slavery. God says to Abraham in the book of Genesis, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and ill-treated for 400 years. We make repeated reference in the Haggadah to the fact that the whole sequence of events was part of a preordained plan. God says to Jacob, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. Why couldn't God make the Israelites into a great nation in ancient Israel? Why did God want the Israelites to experience slavery? Why was exile in Egypt the necessary prelude to their life as a sovereign nation in the promised land? Rabbi Sachs offers this explanation. Loss teaches us to value things, though usually too late. What we have and then lose, we do not take for granted. The religious vision is not about seeing things that are not there. It is about seeing the things that are there and always were, but which we never noticed or paid attention to. Faith is a form of attention. It is a sustained meditation on the miraculousness of what is, because it might not have been. What we lose and are given back, we learn to cherish in a way we would not have done had we never lost it in the first place. Faith is about not taking things for granted. According to Sachs, this principle helps to explain several episodes in the book of Genesis, as our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel, all have difficulty conceiving children. And as our first patriarch, Abraham, goes through the trial of binding his son Isaac, only to be stopped from sacrificing him to God at the very last moment. This is how the people of Israel learned, at the dawn of their history, never to take children for granted. Jewish continuity, the raising of new generations of Jews, is not natural, inevitable, a process that takes care of itself. It needs constant effort and attention. The same is true of freedom. Freedom in the biblical sense, responsible self-restraint, is not natural. To the contrary, the natural order in human societies, as it is in the animal kingdom, is that the strong prey on and dominate the weak. Nothing is rarer or harder to achieve than a society of equal dignity for all. Merely to conceive it requires a massive disengagement from nature. The Torah tells us how this was achieved through the historical experience of a people who would ever afterward be the carriers of God's message to humanity. Israel had to lose its freedom before it could cherish it. Only what we lose do we fully pay attention to. Israel had to suffer the experience of slavery and degradation before it could learn, know, and feel intuitively that there is something morally wrong about oppression. Nor could it, or any other people, carry this message in perpetuity without reliving it every year, tasting the harsh tang of the bread of affliction and the bitterness of slavery. Thus was created, at the birth of the nation, a longing for freedom that was at the very core of its memory and identity. Had Israel achieved immediate nationhood in the patriarchal age, without the experience of exile and persecution, it would, like so many other nations in history, have taken freedom for granted. And when freedom is taken for granted, it has already begun to be lost. I find that verse, that sentence, particularly compelling right now at this time in our American history and our world history, when freedom is taken for granted, it has already begun to be lost. Israel became the people conceived in slavery so that it would never cease to long for liberty and know that liberty is anything but natural. It requires constant vigilance, unceasing moral struggle. Israel discovered freedom by losing it. I pray that this year's observance of Pesach will help to ensure that neither the people of Israel nor the people of this country nor any other free people are on the verge of losing it again. Let us resume our break to breathe. I hope you will continue. Right now, just continue your breathing, but by our formal way of conclusion, and a prayer for all of us during our festival of freedom. I share with you this meditation on the nature of freedom, redemption, and release by Alden Solovey, entitled The Season of Freedom. This is the season of freedom from the will of tyrants, of freedom from the bondage of self, to become a nation and a people. This is the season of release from captivity and oppression, of release from a foreign land to receive God's holy word. This is the season of redemption, of redeeming our bodies and souls, of redeeming our strength and power in service to Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. This is the season of freedom, of reliving the ancient journey, of remembering the treacherous path. This is the season that calls us to stand together, the season that summons us to God's law, the season that leads us home. May you enjoy a sense of home, of the comfort, of the support, of the healing nature, and of the freedom of home this Pesach, at your Seders, and throughout the week that follows. May it be a Zisun observance, a sweet Passover. I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless. Thank you.